at this point, I had been in France for several years and I wasn't, again, ready to go back to the United States, but I also was ready to move on from being a full on live in au pair nanny. A lot of au pairs do it when they're like 18 or 19. I think it's a great, great job when you are that young. But at the time, and I was still very young at the time, but at the time I was like 23 or 24, and I was just kind of like ready to say do what I said I was going to do and like figure something else out for my career. And I also knew at that point, this is important to like the whole story. Was ready to like fully learn French because I didn't speak French at this point either. I was brought into this Franco-American family to speak in American English. And so it didn't really matter that I didn't speak French. And Paris being such a metropolitan city, there are so many English speakers there, very similar to the semester abroad bubble. There is also the English speaking expat bubble in Paris, even when you're beyond being a student. There is a lot of students, there's a lot of au pairs, but there's also just, expats who are there for a year, maybe they're there for longer, but it's very easy to get by. And I think it's probably the same in most major European cities, but it is very easy to get by on very rudimentary French and English. But as things were developing and happening in my life, I was falling more and more in love with France, falling more and more in love with the actual France, like real French culture. And I was ready to like become French in a way. And that meant I needed to speak French. In tandem with that, had decided at this point that I wanted to do my master's degree in France. A, to make that career change that I mentioned, and B, because higher education is so inexpensive. It was like all of these series of events that happened. So when I decided that I wanted to do my master's, I also decided that I wanted to do it at a public school, so a public French university, again, for the cost aspect, very, very inexpensive. But as a foreigner, I needed to prove my level of French in order to go to a public school. And so that's why I was like, all right, I guess I have to learn French because I really needed this like legitimate certificate that proved my level.
Mm.
So I'm
And what
making
was the level you needed?
so I needed B2.
B2.
And
Okay.
that is on like, I believe it's called the Delft scale, I believe. I'm not sure what that scale is called, but it's from like,
I think it's the Common European Framework, I
okay,
think.
okay. So it's like
The
A1,
A1, A2. Yeah.
A2. Yeah. So after just living in France and like being immersed in the language and like soaking everything up, I managed to test into B1. Like I had A2 level. So I was able to start that intensive year-long program at B1. And in the program that I did, it was you went up a level each semester. So the first semester was B1, the second semester was B2. I finished that with my B2 certificate and I was able to enroll in my uni. I was accepted. I had an amazing time at French uni. It was so cool. I ended up doing English literature, which is, I know, like, why go to France to do English literature? But it's funny. Like my program was a bilingual program in English and French. So I was studying English literature, but in French, which was interesting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And so I did that in the interim. I'm like really making a long story very short, but in the interim, I met my now husband. And so we got pretty serious pretty quickly. And me not being French and coming up to the end of my studies, we had to have some very serious conversations very early on because in order for me to stay and have a visa, we had to get married basically. And we were together for 4 years before it happened. So it wasn't like we had like just gotten together and like had to do this wedding only for my visa. But if you have any other, international couples watching, it's something that you do have to navigate much earlier than someone who's in a relationship with someone who's, from their own culture and country. Um, but I mean, luckily, marriage was something we had talked about super early on in our relationship. So it wasn't something that came totally out of the blue. I had my student visa. And then in France, they have this nice visa, basically a year-long visa if you've gone to a uni in France to look for a job. So that gave me a little bit of a buffer. And then I honestly, it was like the silver lining for me of the pandemic. Like COVID gave me a little bit of extra time on my visa because nothing was open. Like the visa offices weren't even open during COVID. So they gave everyone an extension. And then by the time I really like needed my visa, Pierre and I had already been married at that point. So it was very easy then for me to continue to stay on.
Wow. And how long had you been in France at that point then in total?
I arrived in 2014 and Pierre and I got married in 2021.
2021. Okay. So what is that, like 7 years?
Yes. By
Something
the
like
time
that?
we got married, it was like 7 years. By the time I left, it had been like going on 9 years. So I say it's like been like, it was like a decade pretty much.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like from the outside, it sounds like you lived multiple lives
Oh,
in France.
oh my goodness.
Like
Yes.
you had
Yes.
the study abroad, you had the au pair phase, you had the master student,
Hmm.
then getting married. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, you did it in a very comprehensive way. It sounds like you had like a very well-rounded experience in the country. Does it feel like that for you as well?
Yes. Qu- Oddly enough, the like path that I took was fully influenced over my visa situation because as an American, the easiest way to go to France, at least, and I'm not going to speak for other European countries, is as a student. When I finished my undergraduate degree, I was not someone who was like, oh, I can't wait to go back and get my master's. I enjoy learning and I enjoyed school, but I was like very happy to be done with uni when I finished my undergrad. I ended up going back. I mean, I did want to make my career change. I think I probably could have made my career change without getting my degree, but I needed the student visa to stay in France. And ultimately, I think not knowing French before going over also ended up really helping me in my like journey, I guess you could say, because I knew I could also get a visa to learn French, you know? So they kind of like worked hand in hand. Um, that's not to say that like I had many moments of a lot of stress figuring out my visa situation. It was kind of always a moment of stress at the end of each visa, kind of like, I'm so not ready to go home. Now France was home. Like, I'm so not ready to give up this life that I felt that I had truly created for myself, like brick by brick. And that was another reason why I feel so strongly about France and I loved my time there so much because I coming from such a small town where I'd grown up, it felt like everything was kind of decided for me at home. People had known me since I was in elementary school, even like before high school. So like people had a maybe a preconceived notion of who I was, even though, you know, like over the course of my life, I've obviously changed as a person. So being able to go to this place, France, like the level of like anonymity that I felt over there was one of the things that attracted me most to going back because I felt that I could totally start over and be and do whoever I wanted to be and do whatever I wanted to do. And it did all end up working out, which again, and people can take this with a grain of salt or whatever, but I do think it worked out and it was so comprehensive, as you say, because I was doing exactly what I should have been doing, you know, and to be a little bit cheesy, like I think I was meant to go over there to, you know, meet my now husband. You know, I as someone who never even thought I was going to leave the country to end up now married to a French guy, like it's so the path is so it's twists and turns, you know, to get there. But you know, so I have, you know, this person who I'm of course in love with. I also can now speak a language fluently. I now have, you know, my French in-laws and my French friends that I've made along the way, like this whole group of people from this foreign country that I would have never ever discovered if I would have never like taken the plunge. And that's why I say that like one meeting with my semester abroad advisor changed the entire course of my life because it
Mm.
did.
I
Oh,
mean, it's so
yeah.
random though. I mean, because like France is a long way away. I mean,
Yeah.
it's across the pond, as they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's it seems like obviously France was your place and it worked out the
Yes.
way that it worked out, which is awesome.
Yes.
But like if you wanted to start over and have a bit of a blank slate, I mean, hypothetically, you could just do that in another U.S. city, right? The U.S. is so big, you could, you move to L.A. or something, move to another coast, and you could start over there. It seems like that would be easier. There would be no language barrier. There would be no visas at all. But
Yeah.
you still decided to go so far away from home. Like, as an average American person going to France, what's something that they can get in France that they couldn't get in the US?
Um, I know. And I get asked that question too sometimes. Like, why didn't you just move to New York City or something? Like New York is the obvious choice. I'm from the East Coast. Um, Two reasons. The first reason is Paris, when I did my semester abroad, it was the first place I went to, the first time I left home, the first time I left my state to live in a different place. And so because of that, or thanks to that, Paris represented something to me, for me in my mind. Like it wasn't just Paris. It was like the feelings I had felt there when I was doing my semester abroad. I felt that I couldn't get that just going to a different US city. And because I was so unhappy in my life in America, and also I'm kind of like an all or nothing kind of person. So it was kind of like France or bust. Like it was like I wasn't gonna, and that's kind of how I feel coming back to the United States. So I'm not back here full time. We're back here now, basically living here so that my husband can eventually get nationality, so that we both have double nationality. That's the ultimate goal. And it's the same. So I'm in Rhode Island. Would I choose to be in Rhode Island? Maybe not, but if I'm going to be living in the United States, I'm going to be in Rhode Island because I'm here to be with my family, basically. So, but to answer your question, like what Americans can get in France that they can't get in the United States, the biggest difference for me, and kind of like you going to Australia, I wasn't expecting a big difference. I'm like, oh, we're both, Western countries, yeah, it's a foreign language, but how different can it be? My brother moved to Japan, and my brother lives in Japan. And so him moving from the United States to Japan, you kind of expect a big culture shock going from, Western world to Eastern world. And in France, I wasn't expecting that at all, but it's inherently different than life in the United States. There's more of a focus on being social, which is a difference that people don't really talk about, I don't think. I think Americans have this stereotype of being so friendly and everyone's saying
Yeah.
hello and hugging and shaking hands and high-fiving all the time. But in
Uh-huh.
real day-to-day American life, we're very like, I'm in my house and you're in your house. And we'll maybe get together once a month, but it's got to be planned really far in advance. And we're going to hang out for like an hour and a half, and that's going to be it. Which that's really hard for my husband to navigate living here. He really misses the social aspect. Like French people are very social. They want to share meals together. They want to talk for 10 hours. They want to have these very deep, profound, existential conversations. They want to debate in a healthy way. And that is something that I really, really like about France that I think America is lacking, this sense of community. In a way, it's I think a good, I guess, commentary maybe on America being like a capitalist country and France being a socialist country. No, the values are different, and I think life is just, it moves at a slower pace there, and and that's okay. Like an hour-long lunch break is normal. It's not normal to be munching on your sandwich in one hand and typing on your keyboard in the other, and an appreciation for culture and beauty, and yeah, those are the biggest, I think, differences that I feel as an American.